Once again, we do begin with breaking news. On this day 18, Russia expands its war to every part of Ukraine, striking a military training base less than 15 miles from the Polish border. Video shared on social media shows the aftermath. Smoke rising, buildings damaged after being pelted by cruise missiles. Dozens killed and more than 100 wounded. That base was used by the U.S. and NATO to train Ukrainian soldiers. No Americans were there at the time, but the war is now moving closer to Poland, a NATO ally, raising fears the alliance could soon be dragged into the fight. And as Russian ground forces inch closer to Ukraine's capital, we've learned an American journalist, Brent Renaud, was killed in an ambush just outside the city. A second American spoke from his hospital bed, describing how they came under fire after passing a checkpoint. Leaders around the world now condemning that attack. Tonight, refugees are still streaming out of Ukraine. Nearly 2.7 million have fled their war-torn country. But some experts warn that number could double or triple in the coming weeks. The president of Ukraine visiting wounded troops at a hospital, awarding some with medals for their courage. Tonight, some small signs of optimism for a possible ceasefire. ABC's Maggie Rulli spoke with a top advisor to President Zelensky and leads us off tonight from Lviv.
Tonight, in a major escalation, Russian forces attacking dangerously close to NATO forces on the Polish border. Just before dawn, Russian missiles striking a military facility near the town of Yavoriv, just about 10 miles from Poland and an hour west of Lviv. Videos circulating on social media show the aftermath. At least 35 killed, more than 100 wounded. One volunteer fighter who did not want to use his name telling our Inez de la Quintera.
This morning we wake up, there's missiles flying everywhere. I didn't have time to panic. I just focused on running as fast as I can.
That facility previously used by the U.S. and NATO to train Ukrainian troops. Our Martha Raddatz pressing Pentagon spokesman John Kirby.
If they strike in Poland, what happens?
Well, look, we take our Article 5 commitment very seriously. An armed attack against one is considered an armed attack against all.
The town of Yavoriv, along a route used to supply Ukraine with Western military aid. Russian officials warning such shipments are legitimate targets. But it's also a major route refugees have been using to get out of the country. It's a road American Keith Crow has driven many times. We meet him outside the train station in Lviv.
And what made you pick up from your life in Santa Fe to come here?
I couldn't watch it. So I went to the border, ran to the border essentially, rented a car, and saw people walking over.
He says he normally crosses the border twice a day, picking up people who need a ride in Ukraine and taking them to safety in Poland. When we meet him, he's surrounded by families. This woman tells us she's grateful for the ride, as Russian attacks are getting dangerously closer.
It was like a new edge in this war because we don't have any safety place in Ukraine.
As Vladimir Putin's forces advance on the capital of Kyiv, towns on the outskirts are war zones. In Irpin, 12 miles to the northwest, Ukrainian soldiers helping to evacuate the living and the dead. Among those killed, American journalist Brent Renaud. He and fellow American journalist Juan Arredondo coming under fire at a checkpoint.
Tell me, please, what is your name?
Juan?
Juan? Where are you from?
The U.S.
Juan describing the attack from his hospital bed.
We crossed the first bridge in Irpin. We're going to film other refugees leaving, and we got into a car. Somebody offered to take us to the other bridge, and we crossed a checkpoint, and they start shooting at us. So the driver turned around, and they kept shooting. It's two of us. My friend is Brent Renaud, and he's been shot and left behind.
In recent weeks, Renaud was in the region for Time Studios. Time issuing a statement tonight saying, "We are devastated by the loss. Our hearts are with all of Brent's loved ones. It is essential that journalists are able to safely cover this ongoing invasion and humanitarian crisis in Ukraine."
I will just say that this is part and parcel of what has been a brazen aggression on the part of the Russians, where they have targeted civilians, they have targeted hospitals, they have targeted places of worship, and they have targeted journalists.
This woman, inconsolable, describing the attack on her home. Something went through the air and then boom, she said. Until this, I didn't want to leave my town. She, like so many Ukrainians, now must flee. The white flag marking this van as civilian transport. Today, Ukrainian President Zelensky visiting wounded soldiers in a Kyiv hospital. Negotiations between the two countries becoming more urgent. Russia still demanding Ukraine change its constitution to commit to not joining NATO or the European Union, recognize Crimea as a part of Russia and the eastern separatist regions as independent. But today, both sides hinting at progress. Mikhailo Podolyak, a chief advisor to President Zelensky who's leading negotiations with Russia, tells me he's cautiously optimistic. But insists Ukraine will offer no concessions.
President Biden has spoken quite a bit about the no-fly zone, saying that if America was to implement this no-fly, it could lead to World War III.
Forcefully, he says he believes World War III has already started. Now leaders must decide which side they're on.
Major global implications. Let's get right to Maggie Rulli in Lviv for us. And Maggie, those negotiations we know are ongoing, but Russia is trying to squash resistance in occupied areas in the south. Tell us about the latest reports about another mayor being kidnapped.
Yeah, Lindsay, this is a second mayor in another occupied town. You know, we still haven't heard from that mayor who was kidnapped in Melitopol. That town is now under Russian rule. They've installed a puppet administration. But Lindsay, this has not stopped the protests. We have seen people taking to the streets despite the dangers. And now, Lindsay, the big fear is that Russia seems to be targeting prominent voices within the resistance. Lindsay?
A growing concern for those left behind. Maggie, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.